Jensen Farms.
See this works.
Is there a way to press play?
Sheila, can you press play on the video?
And it might be that protected content we not allow.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So I can,
talk through it.
yeah, no, I can add a little bit on this.
Okay.
So many of you, if you were here in Colorado at the time, you may remember in 2011 there was a terrible listeria outbreak that ultimately was traced back to cantaloupe grown at a farm, Jensen Farms, here in Colorado. And it was truly a tragic situation. It was September of 2011, and over the course of about 30 days, this outbreak ended up taking the lives of 30, well, close to 40, mostly elderly people, a pregnant woman who had a miscarriage, and 150 people ended up in the hospital. In addition to that, though, the impact on the cantaloupe and the Rocky Ford branded cantaloupe in Colorado, the industry, will, as we'll hear in a moment, was truly horrific from an economic point of view. So we had those twin really major problems, and why did they happen the way they did? Why did it get so bad? Because despite the really tremendous work by Colorado Public Health, CDPHE, and the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, in Atlanta, from the time the outbreak was initially identified to the time that the specific farm was identified as the source of the contamination, almost 2 weeks went by. And in the course of that time, what happened was there was a series of broad announcements as the public health officials acted to try to reduce the risk. So first it was cantaloupes and Colorado cantaloupes. It took about a week to identify that, and there was a public announcement, which basically put the kibosh on the cantaloupe industry, especially in Colorado entirely. A couple of days later, the announcement came out. It wasn't just any Colorado cantaloupe, it was Rocky Ford cantaloupe. Of course, that's probably the biggest, most important kind of cantaloupe in Colorado.
At least to me.
And then 2 days after that, the Jensen Farms, specifically Jensen Farms, was announced as the single farm that caused the problem. Now, what did that mean? It meant that Safeway, Walmart, King Soopers had already sent out robocalls to all the people who they could identify from their loyalty cards, had bought any cantaloupe of any kind from Colorado, or any kind of Rocky Ford cantaloupe in specific, which had the effect of cratering the entire market, even though, as tragic as the consequences were, it was really only one farm that had caused the problem. Now, we can talk about how it happened. My office, we ended up prosecuting the two owners of the farm. It took 2 years to make that case because the laws around putting contaminated food into the food chain, certainly from a criminal point of view, are fairly clunky, and we needed to establish that there was actual negligence. The way we were able to do that, after an extended investigation by the FDA, was that it turned out that the equipment at Jensen Farm had previously been potato cleaning equipment, and that they had repurposed it to clean cantaloupe and had failed to use the chlorine cleaning component of that potato cleaning equipment. None of that relates directly to the nature of the harm, but it shows you each one of these cases, a contamination case, is going to have its own unique background. What was so damaging, both in terms of lives lost, people seriously ill, and also the effect on the economy in southeast Colorado, was the length of time it took. There simply was not technology available to be able to identify the specific source in a way that consumers and grocers could rely upon until it was almost too late, and the harm had been done reputationally and to the individual people who became ill.
So real quickly, since the video can't be shown, can you scroll back one real quick? Later on, if you want to see this video is how Walmart paid the price. Because people didn't sue Jensen. They ended up suing Jensen, but they also ended up suing Walmart. So there was litigation throughout the supply chain. So multiple people involved, multiple pocketbooks affected. Next slide, please. Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I'm
Okay, she's got it. Good. So, when this happened, Dr. Frank Yayanis was head of Walmart Food Safety. This was before IBM moved in. Now, Dr. Frank Yayanis is head of FDA Food Safety. So he would have been the person John would have been interfacing with. Walmart was one of the first companies that did IBM blockchain for food. They saw the power in it, they jumped on.
And I believe Walmart is now requiring, it's a mandate that all of its suppliers utilize the blockchain as of January 1st, 2020. So it's a real thing, and I think Walmart is doing a great job in adopting the technology. I think the statistic there I found fairly interesting is what used to take 7 days to trace in the ag supply chain, now it takes 2.2 seconds, which is pretty stark.
And John's story validates. So real quickly, I'm going to stand aside. We're trying to get to a point where we have Q&A, so I realize there's technical people in this. These next slides are going to go quickly. If you have questions, can we either at the end or on the side, okay?
Okay.
So real quickly, to understand blockchain, you have to understand who are the people involved and where are the nodes. This is a quick one. You can see the farmer, you can see the processor, where in essence this happened. You can see distributor, middleman, Walmart, as well as the retailer, consumer, and the regulator, which is right there. Next one, please.
And the issue is the multiple intermediaries in this chain, whereas blockchain comes in and shortens that process by 4.
And what you don't want is the next box, which is prosecutor.
Right, right. And so in essence, blockchain is a data aggregator, data integration tool where they can get a hold of the data to do root cause analysis. It was said in an earlier presentation, this doesn't work. Who are going to protect data? How are you going to get all the data together? I struggle with that. In the first talk we had here, we had Salesforce talking about MuleSoft. This is a report from Gartner that talks about the biggest data integration platforms. I think MuleSoft was bought for a couple billion. I work for Informatica, and they're the industry leader. This is an established base. This is established technology. There was also something previous said that the overhead of IoT is not working. Goldman Sachs, you can see, average device in 2004 was $1.30. By 2020, it's supposed to be 38 cents. I trust Goldman Sachs. They said that there wasn't enough technologies to bring in. If we go back to the first one, just go back to the one more slide at the beginning. This is the farmer. I'll jump ahead a little quick. CB Insights is one of the leaders. You can see all the people playing in the space. They have access, they create the data. This is where the blockchain will come from. Yeah.
Discuss this.
Yeah. That's the So how can we protect IP, intellectual property, and data through the schemas? You may not like it, but some things meant to protect consumers are rolling down. There's GDPR, there's CCPA, there's PIP-EPA. All they're doing is setting data schemas, they're setting data security standards to where only the right people can see the information and only for the right amount of time. That rolls back to companies that when they have to supply their information up through the blockchain and deal with different vendors, so not only Walmart, they might deal with Amazon. Each of them may require different data, or some of the same data, but they don't want everybody seeing the same data. This is where some of the current regulatory advancements are coming in.
And obviously it's important to distinguish between IP, true intellectual property, and know-how, and trade secrets, etc., from personally identifiable information, which on some level applies into this chain as well.
So, Colorado is attempting to improve margins on economic development. This is rural economic development. Rural has stayed behind. You see the advancement here in Denver? John, we got 2 natives here. We both have those roots. You go there. These towns are amazing people have to speak because I am one of them. but they have not moved ahead. Their ages have increased and other things.
And I think, from a technology perspective, as I'm sure everybody who's interested in this space and knows enough about it, sees how blockchain can just revitalize the industry on such a different level. Farmers are dying out. Farmers are committing suicide because the subsidies are not there. The trade war is not helping either. So modernizing and having this interest around it, at least from a younger generation, and seeing that it's a viable sector to go into, I think is relatively important. And that's really what drove HB 1247. And that is the advisory group that we're on. We are preparing a report that's due January 15th to the Colorado legislature to see whether we can advise them on how to legislate in this area, which would make it more friendly and viable incentives for farmers using the blockchain technology.
I think one thing that is really notable, when you go into rural Colorado, especially in farming parts of the state, what really is amazing is the vulnerability of the economy there. So when you have an event like the Jensen Farms contamination event, which we're going to hear a little bit more about the economic impact, there's not that much of a margin in so many of the farming communities. And when you have one terrible incident like this, you can have a really marked effect on the viability of agriculture in a county. So in addition to just creating blockchain technology, potentially creating that environment that makes it possible for younger people to stay involved, it's also a way of avoiding the really cataclysmic problems that can come from one bad incident, which is what happened here. James, you can talk further about this, but that industry is still recovering now, 8 years later.
Rocky Ford, yes, but we'll go on to that. You want to talk about this, John, since you saw it too?
Well, I think these numbers speak for themselves. Realistically, in Prowers County, this industry, the cantaloupe side of things, just got knocked out completely. And then you saw, 3/4 of the cantaloupe production essentially killed. That's not a minor thing in a county like that, which does not have a large population. And it's the kind of thing that if it were possible to identify quickly and enable public health agencies to identify specific sources without sort of having to broad brush the attack, could have a market effect and would also save lives, which is crucial.
So let's look at the estimated value was at least 5.6 million. That doesn't sound like a lot, but realize the average household in that county earns $35,000 to $40,000. Now you take 40,000 into the 5.6 million, and you get the multiplier effect. And that's just in Rocky Ford. That's not in my home county, in Prowers County.
Again, sorry to throw out all these statistics, but there's a statistic that came out just recently in 2018 that the utilization of blockchain in the ag industry would increase revenue by $60,000 on average to each farmer, which is pretty significant.
How to put more money in farmers' hands? I'm going to take a personal liberty up here. This is where I grew up. I grew up in the city. I grew up in the farm. My family on the Hispanic side, my family worked the fields at one time. 100 years ago, we were working the fields. So that's why it's so personal and tangible for me. Prowers County, they're good people. They're some of the most ingenuitive people that you'll ever meet. They're salt of the earth. They're complete salt of the earth. A little bit of demographics. They're one of the, usually ranked in the bottom, like 10, if not 6 poorest counties in Colorado. Median household income as of 2017 is only $41,740. Agriculture, to understand the impact of just that one recall, agriculture accounted for 11.1% of their gross production down there. And what's also happening, going back to something Yep said, farmers aren't staying, they're dying off. We saw the average age in Lamar, I thought was 37, 38 years old. The population is declining. As the Front Range has exploded, they've gotten older and people have gone out. When I graduated high school, there was 110 in the class. The classes are now down to 80, if you really want to go. How can we put more money in farmers' hands? Improve brand security and awareness. Pretty simple. Rocky Ford, Post Jensen Farms, trademarked their stuff. They took additional steps. So now if you hear Rocky Ford cantaloupes, it's registered.
Yeah, the irony is that Jensen Farms is not in Rocky Ford, so, it was essentially a drive-by shooting.
Right. An example, it's like in an earlier presentation, basically we've heard that there was no product differentiation. There has been a ton of product differentiation. I have a abbreviation up there. Who knows of Chateauneuf de Paul wine? Who knows about Côte d'Or wine? What's the difference between them? Same grape, grown in different parts. The exact same grape blend, grown in different parts. What's the price differences between them? Chateauneuf, a decent Chateauneuf de Paul, we're running $50 to $70. Decent.
That's why I don't know.
A good Côte d'Or, we're running 15 to 20.
Yeah.
You can hear it, but you can go to your liquor store and see it. Another example that we use at the state legislature is, what's better, Hatch chili or Pueblo chili?
Hatch.
Can we remove him real quick? I have to say Pueblo. They are. And one statistic I saw, Hatch has a 10% premium. Why is that? Because they got a brand. And actually, is anybody aware of the Scoville's scale? Which one of the two is hotter? Pueblo, by almost 2x. Again, if you hear it out there, who do you think's hotter? Who do you think's got more to it? And they're 500 miles away. It's a little bit different, but they're the same plant. Another thing which you've been hearing consistently is remove the middleman, remove the middle layer. That is true. Does everybody know who UNFI is? Does UNFI? How many people here go to Whole Foods? UNFI supplies your food there. They're one of the largest middleman wholesalers. And every time we put a statistic up here, we can show you the source reference. UNI, as of July 2019, had 12.83% gross margin. Farmers don't come close to that. Farmers have like 6% if they're lucky, John. Would you say that?
It's not about right. It depends on the. Right now, the soy folks are not doing so.
Right, and we have somebody here from the cattle farmers. What's the margins on beef?
3, maybe.
3? So that's a potential. That's a potential. Another thing that really hits, and I know this is a big issue for Governor Polis and Commissioner Greensburg, reduce food waste. An average of 30% from field to your plate gets wasted. That's significant. So we can talk about greenhouse effects and saving the environment, but let's talk about what does that mean for the farmer. Increase lot sizes. Do the math. If they have bigger lot sizes, they're going to earn more money. Also, with the use of blockchain, since there's going to be back-end data around it, people can understand, yeah, this is blighted, but they know it's safe because they know the entire story. So it can become an incentive to keep on buying different foods and doing a lot of safety.
And the other bullet point that should be added there is ag insurance. So being able to use smart contracts on the blockchain during force majeure events, catastrophic hurricane or whatever it is, can just facilitate that process a lot quicker to recoup on the insurance, from an insurance perspective.
And that's the end of the slide, so.
I will just throw one last note. It turns out that the Jensen brothers, who own Jensen Farms, are currently under indictment in Kansas. They went into the hemp business. And I'm not sure how blockchain would have avoided this problem, but they FedExed samples of hemp. What they thought was going to Washington apparently went to a FedEx center in Kansas. where dogs alerted on it, and they ended up getting indicted for shipping marijuana into Kansas.
In my own county, no.
At the end of the day, I think that the core thing to recall about blockchain technology, there's going to be a period of time in any outbreak where CDC and Colorado Health is going to have to actually go out physically with questionnaires and talk to the people who've gotten sick to try to identify. It took about 3 or 4 days to determine that there were cantaloupes involved. But once that was determined, if this kind of technology, if blockchain technology had been in place, it would have been possible that day to determine the location, the farm that was contaminated, as opposed to what took another 10, 11 days to identify it. That, if you look at the actual charts, many of the illnesses and many of the deaths took place in the following 2 to 3 weeks. If it had been possible to stop it at that point and actually even go back and trace the Jensen Farm cantaloupe that had gone to at least some of the people who were ultimate buyers, lives would have been saved, and also the Rocky Ford cantaloupe industry would have not taken anywhere near the kind of hit they did. What's interesting as well, and I'll just throw this out, the bill that went through this past year to study the question in Colorado is fantastic. But when you look at it, the fact that Walmart or let's say King Soopers or Safeway or Whole Foods are potentially going to start implementing this, that will drive some of this technology into the industry because it is for their protection, their own financial protection as well, because they get sued. And you know, it's interesting under the circumstances that were presented here, aggressive plaintiffs' lawyers able to get a settlement out of Walmart on the facts here, but the reality is that that happens every time a terrible tragedy like this happens. So there are multiple avenues, and if Colorado, through this bill and through the state government, can get on the front end of making sure that our agricultural sector is really up and running and familiar with blockchain, that puts us, our farmers in this state, on a sort of a cutting edge, potentially, in dealing with those big suppliers all around the country.
So wait, before we turn to questions, I think the logical conclusion here is blockchain saves lives. Blockchain saves lives.
Yeah.
No, and clearly,
But it really does. Yeah, it can
clearly
save
in
lives.
this case, it would have saved lives had the cantaloupe been traceable through blockchain technology.
Absolutely.
So 2 brief questions. First, are you using a consultant to conduct your study, or what's the methodology of your study? And then the second is the hope that the study will go to the legislature and they will approve funding for a government-created blockchain system for agriculture, or to bring in private entities that will work with the agricultural communities, not the government?
So the first answer to your question is yes, maybe, because we've yet to meet. Yav and I have been meeting with a lot of the parties as the person behind it. I've told this story a few times. The answer to your second question is yes, maybe. On this panel, we have 2 PhD ag economists. We have myself, we have Yev, who's a leading edge blockchain lawyer. We have Farm Bureau, Farmers Union. We have people working actually on projects. So everything's possible. We have
So it's a stakeholder engagement
yes.
study versus going out and doing surveys.
It's fairly early stages. So.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Her,
Yeah, great. Have you guys met with the beef chain folks in Wyoming yet?
yes,
Great.
yes.
That makes me very happy. Yeah, they're the first USDA approved solution for blockchain tracking of agricultural
One
products.
caveat on this, I'm sorry, we're running short on time, but we're about ready to get the two minutes, so I wanted to get to a couple questions. Unfortunately, there was a amendment passed on this. This initial study is limited to commodities. Eventually, we will get there. We're limited to, we can't go into further.
What I'm about to ask, I think, would require an entire other presentation. So you can just mention some examples, maybe. This presentation that you just gave was essentially about how blockchain can aid in traceability to mitigate the impacts of something like this food contamination incident.
Right.
So, but the title is Blockchain and Rural Economic Development, and Yev mentioned an example where blockchain technology could potentially aid in adding $60,000. You can repeat the
There's
statistics.
an added revenue, yes,
Yeah.
per annual, one farmer.
So, in the particular example that you spoke about, the traceability, it wasn't clear to me that that creates the added value which would generate the 60,000. So, could you speak or mention some examples, or you know, like, hey, go on the internet and look at this thing?
Well, no, we got 2 minutes, so I'm going to give you a quick rapid fire. I mentioned chefs are known to popular cultural. We're talking brand awareness, okay? So with the use of blockchain, you can actually increase your brands. I mentioned Pueblo chili versus Hatch chili. That's marketing, that's brand awareness. With blockchain, you have the data to create better brand awareness. If you have better brands, you get greater margins. That's kind of a marketing norm, okay?
And plus just cutting out the intermediaries, right?
Too.
That it's more of a direct route and pathway from farm to table without having
Potentially.
to go through a distributor and a warehouser, and et cetera. So if that supply chain, like the one that's being used by Walmart through the IBM hyperledger, right?
Is that because it provides the purchaser the data that would have previously got from the warehouse or the...
They don't get it right now. They get nothing right now.
Right, but why does that change that, right? Having data doesn't necessarily remove steps. So what about that removes those steps that enables the removal of those?
Okay, so
Can
that
I
is,
back on that for a second? Because I've worked in this particular problem in Central America, and the reason why wholesalers and intermediaries are there is because they provide a particularly important service to a farmer in terms of collecting the goods
consolidation.
and distributing them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not
So,
clear like,
let
oh, we got blockchain,
Okay,
so
so-
now they can have
And
access.
I want to, we're almost, we can catch you. So, real quickly, you can extend some of the current laws. You can improve, so if you can validate your food safety, you can extend the distribution. If you extend the distribution, you get more hands and greater sets too. Because in essence, what blockchain does, and John brought on it, if you have the root cause analysis done on the food safety, it's easier for you to get to better market too. I mean, that's trying to capitalize.
I mean, I do think that-
And I mean, can we have a couple more questions? We got John? Can we have a
I'm
couple
just
more
a
questions?
disaster response guy,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
2026, so, yeah, we got time for a couple more.
Okay.
Are you aware of any insurers in Colorado offering relief to farmers in Colorado who are utilizing blockchain? Because it would sound like you're reducing risk. That would be, and an insurer would obviously have an interest in seeing taken care of.
Maybe. Again, that's the study. If we were in the middle of the study, it's a very open study. And the answer is maybe and hopefully yes.
Do you have that in Wyoming? Is that,
We should.
The data is yet for the actuarial.
go ahead.
No,
We're going to work with the retail to do that exact thing.
Okay,
And that-
can we jump to him real quick? Okay, what was your question? No, you, sir. You had your hand raised. Make sure we got to your question, yeah.
I didn't raise my hand, I commented on someone else's.
Okay.
Just in terms of triangulating the cause, what's the minimum number of people that need to be sick? You mentioned before they were sick. Can we do it?
You know,
with one, or-
So I'm not a public health expert, I'll just preface by saying that, but I think that it depends on the type of illness. And in this case, they had 2 or 3 cases of Listeria pop up, and that was enough for Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment to say, whoa, we need to keep an eye on this. And then they saw 3 and 5 and 7 cases in short order and essentially shot off a flare and started working on it. And that, I'm sure, had to do with the rareness of Listeria infections. And it took them about 5 days to identify the strains, but once they did that, things were pretty quickly.
So this is really great, and I would love to see more data from the source, but who's going to go out and teach these aging farmers how to use cutting-edge technology? And where's the incentive for them to even do that, other than just being told that they're going to get an extra $60,000 a year?
Okay, so
It's an excellent question.
that is an excellent question. this is not going to be gentle, but it's going to be on point. John and I know this. Those aging farmers, per se, use more bleeding edge technology than you would ever imagine. John Deere has been a leader in that space. They've been doing what's called JD Link. JD Link is IoT connected devices that go up to satellite that tells them what's happening with the tractor, hours, and all the possible details. A good friend of mine, gentleman farmer, he went to Northeastern Junior College. He has an ag mechanics degree. I barely got him looking at everything. They're using GPS and JD Link to plant their seeds. This is 6 years ago. I remember talking to him on the phone, it's like, am I talking to the same person I grew up with? There is the perception that farmers don't take on new technology. I completely argue. You present the case to them, they will take it on. I mean, farmers built this state. Farmers built this state. They saw technology, they've always been taking advantage. It's kind of in the DNA.
Also, I think you're going to see the big distributors insist on it, and that will incentivize them. And I'm sure they'll actually try to support the Walmarts of classic.
It's easy for Walmart to top down say,
Exactly.
we're going to incentivize you by providing you with folks who are going to build this out for you, but it's harder for like the Jensen brothers who have to resort themselves to shipping hemp across state.
Well, what's interesting is that they were supplying to a lot of big distributors, Jensen Farms. So those kind of commands, so to speak, would have come down to Jensen Farms pretty quickly. And, their cantaloupes went to 28 states to give you a sense of how broad the distribution was. So it's sort of the James point. I think we've run way over time.
You're doing good. Thank you
All
very
right.
much.
Thank you.
Sorry to hear that, it's very rough. Always, yeah. All right. Yeah, we're flying back
Wake up at 2 a.m.
Are you?
Bye.